Kelly Koontz, welcome to the REI Diamond Show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Dan. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, for sure. So here for me is Chicago, and here for you is
Seattle, Washington,
nice. Home of Amazon and Microsoft too, I believe, right?
Amazon, Microsoft, Costco. We used to say Boeing, but that's a little more in flux, and we're not so sure we want to own them. Yeah, take credit for them these days.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So, Submeter Solutions Inc. Would you mind starting us off here with what your company does and what you're focused on?
Happy to do that. Submeter Solutions, we've been in business since about the year 2000, and our whole business niche is all about servicing multifamily or multi-unit properties that are getting a single utility charge at their building, but the owners, managers want to figure out how to uh, allocate those charges down to the tenant resident level. So our business will be in the first part selling you the proper equipment and metering equipment to be able to meter each individual unit. And then our second part of our business is we can offer monthly utility billing services for those residents on an ongoing basis. So excited to be here today, Dan, and kind of talk through all the details about how we do that for multifamily owners.
Nice. So let's start with why we care about that. So I'm an investor. I have buildings which we can probably use as examples throughout today's show. I have a 10 unit building in Chicago. I have a 14 unit building in Chicago. These are older vintage, right? But my water bill there, I want to say, is probably $800 a month. It might be five, 600. It might be a thousand, or it might
Mhm.
be 1,000 every 2 months.
Right.
At the end of the year, I'm spending 5 or 6 thousand dollars in utilities. And one of
Right.
the things for me is some of my tenants, um, interesting side fact too for why we care. In
Hmm.
Philadelphia, water is lienable. So like if the tenant doesn't pay your single family water bill, they can put a lien on your property, you have to pay it. And on those ones, Kelly, I notice when there's a running toilet going for the month
Hmm.
because it jumps from like $60 a month to $200 a month.
Yep.
Sometimes you don't notice till the fourth month and they're $800 in. Well, these tenants don't really have the extra cushion to cover that kind of thing.
Right.
But if they're getting that bill and covering it, guess who's calling about the toilet that's suddenly leaking or the
Ab-
faucet that's dripping, right?
Absolutely. What a great introduction, Dan. You are singing the song of why we can help those kinds of situations. So let's just kind of use your one of your 10 unit apartments as that example. Let's just call it $600 a month for water, maybe water sewer. You have essentially three options that we could see to deal with capturing that cost. And I'll bet too that if you do a P&L on that property every year, it's the cost for utilities is probably number one or two, and but maybe behind only taxes on your expenses. So this is not an insignificant expense for you. And you're, of course, wanting to recapture that from your residents. And there's really about three ways to do that. Many people still
And
just
and,
hope that,
and before you
yeah,
before you give us the three ways, I just wanted to put some numbers to the calculation. So we're
sure.
running with $600 a month example.
Mhm.
That's $7,200 a month that would be back in my pocket minus the billing fees. But at an 8.5 cap rate, which is how apartment buildings are valued, I'm looking at $84,705 that year in additional value. So instead of being able to sell that property for, I don't know, $1.1 million, I can probably get 1.5 to 1. I'm sorry, 1.15 to 1.7, right? 60, 70, $50,000
Yep.
extra. Nothing to sneeze at.
Nothing to sneeze at all. And now you can try to recapture those costs by adding 50, $60 to your monthly rental. But that's fixed. That's not really tied to whether the rates went up last year and you didn't catch it. And it certainly has nothing to do with the actual usage. And we're not even going to talk about that leaking toilet. We will in a minute. But that's very haphazard at best. And The key thing there is your residents have zero incentive to care about how much water they use or conserve or let you know about that toilet leak. So that's been the most common historically way for property owners to recapture that. There's certainly your audience is probably familiar with the acronym RUBS, where you can take that utility bill and allocate it out, prorate it to everybody at the property based on occupancy or square footage or whatever. Most jurisdictions in the country allow that mathematical allocation. But again, you've really disconnected usage with the resident, and they're not going to change their usage behavior. And there's a real disconnect on how much they use versus how much they charge. So we
And
believe,
what does RUB stand for?
yeah,
What's the acronym?
yeah, RUBS, Ratio Utility Billing System. That's what that
Okay.
stands for. And it's a fancy way of describing an allocation-based method to split up the bill. We believe the third option's the best, and that's add meters to all 10 units at that 10-unit apartment. And then based on those reads, charge the residents based on their actual usage. And what happens when you do that, you're still recovering those costs like you would with RUBS, but you're recovering all of them and you're changing behavior. And what is so fun for us when we put a new system in an existing older property is give it 2 or 3 months and we're going to see that utility bill literally drop 20 to 30%
Wow.
as habits and human nature kicks in. When you're paying for something, you take better care of it.
Yeah, and I think the number three, the meters too. I'm just thinking through like the marketing and position of rent. So if I'm renting my unit for $1,400, 1,200 if it's not renovated, if I'm like putting in there's this water charge and it's $60 a month, or we're dividing the whole water bill, there's this like essence of unfairness that shows up. And immediately there's this like sort of cloudy feeling in the mind of the tenant who's thinking of purchasing a service. Whereas
Mhm.
if I'm like, hey, this apartment, you're going to have to set up your water bill account in order, first thing when you move in. So you're going to have to pay the water bill. They might still have a little sting in having to pay the water and might still want to comparison shop me to other units. But there's some sense of it being more official when I'm telling them they have to set up their water bill account versus rubs or some blanket utility charge. You blanket utility charges. Oh, so the rent's $14.50. Got
Yeah,
it. Keep
yeah,
shopping.
yeah. You're spot on, Dan. And I can't stress enough how you tell them you are going to pay for your utility and you're in charge. It's going to be based on what you use. That really creates some empowerment for the resident versus feeling that they're just having a fee imposed on them, whether it's rubs or a fixed fee or something like that. So, if we were in the year 2004 and you had your 10-unit apartment, the market may not be used to not including, say, water and sewer. But in 2024, this is more common than not now. A resident shopping for a new apartment is going to expect that they're probably going to be paying their utilities in addition to the outside of the rent.
Do you have any insight on data across the country as far as like percentage of maybe new construction that has utility submeter and build, or even when they retrofit the older existing product, like how much of the market now is submetered in the apartment space?
Yeah, great question. I don't have one single answer for you. I can tell you that almost everywhere in the US, new construction is either encouraging it or certainly where we are on the West Coast, absolutely requiring it. You can't build an apartment in California or Oregon or Washington without including meters. And that's been that way for 6 or 8 years. Uh, you know, um, Submetering's been around a long time, and the 100, 200 unit large apartment complexes have been doing this a long time. I think one of the messages we want to share with your listeners today, Dan, is that submetering is not just for large apartments. Your 10-unit example or even a triplex really can take great advantage of submetering. The concept is the exact same. The hardware has gotten so good and it's not that expensive that you can have a return on investment within a year of installing a metering equipment, even on a very small property.
And do you need like a Wi-Fi system on the premises to communicate with the metering system?
Yeah, let's spend a minute and talk about kind of how all this works. So
Yeah, good
we've
call.
used we've used water as the example because that's probably the most common one, but I don't want to miss out on the fact with your listeners that this applies to gas, it applies to electricity. If the utilities haven't individually metered any of those utilities, then submetering is really a great option. Starts with a meter. The type of water meters that we can offer are brand new utility grade, super accurate meters that are designed for our industry. So they're a little more compact in size than, say, the large bronze meter that the utility has in the pit box outside your single family home. But they're nonetheless doing the exact same job. And all of our meters are equipped with electronics that offer an electronic output that can be connected up to a reading system. Most of the time, that's a wireless based one. And that data then is collected at each individual meter. And most of the time, those are located inside the units. And then that data is pushed up to the internet on a cloud server. And that can be done through an Ethernet connection, through Wi-Fi, or even cellular. So again, if you have that triplex that you don't even have internet service there, that's no problem. We can get all that data collected from the meters and up to the cloud via a cellular connection.
So the cellular connection would be a part of the package installed, and then you would pay that, we could pay that bill through the billing system in a sense.
Yep. If you've got an existing internet service there, then we're going to connect the hardware up to that, and there is no ongoing monthly fee. If you need cellular, it's an easy switch to flip to turn that on, and then we're going to bill you $35 to $40 a month for that cellular service. So it's inexpensive, and we have a lot of clients that take advantage of that.
Okay. So 35 bucks a month. Since we're touching on the costs of the billing, we'd have 35 for cellular. On my
Mhm.
10 unit, what my solution probably looks like personally, just to kind of stay on that
Sure.
topic, I would probably put the Wi-Fi in because I've been kicking around the installation of a couple of cameras on Wi-Fi at the same
Mhm.
time. And I
Mhm.
haven't pulled the trigger on it because it's like something that's not pressing and it's not urgent, so I haven't done it. But if I were going to package cameras and a utility, it now might make sense to throw the Wi-Fi in there and sort of upgrade the building to
Yeah.
technology level. So 35 bucks a month for the cellular, and what
Yep.
does it run for the rest of my
Yeah.
10 unit building, let's say?
Yeah. So let's start with the individual units. You're going to need 10 water meters that have a wireless transceiver, and the cost of that is only $120 per unit. So 10 times 120. And then one gateway for the property that's pre-configured by us. Everything's programmed and pull out of the box, easy to install. That's going to be an additional $2,000 to $3,000, depending on the specifics for your property. So your 10 units is going to be, say, $4,500 in total for the hardware costs. And then, Dan, we need to get those meters installed. And so we're going to work with your local plumber or a handyman, anybody who's familiar with working on some plumbing lines. That can typically be as easy and or inexpensive as $75 to $100 a unit, or if it's a more complex application, it may be $200 to $300 per unit. So you don't want to forget the installation piece, but it is not a bank breaker.
Okay. Are there buildings that don't work? Let's say my 10 unit doesn't really have the kind of supply lines that cut the unit's usage individually.
Super good question. So certainly today, with the cost of water and sewer, building architects and developers are designing them so that they have a single water supply line going in there that can be isolated. If you've got a 40 or 50-year-old building that has stacked riser plumbing, that have back-to-back bathrooms and kitchens, it's not so easy to separate the individual water for every unit. But if those properties have an individual hot water heater in every unit, what that means is the hot water is separated. So what we can do is a hybrid system called a hot water allocation method. We'll put a water meter on the hot water heater, the supply for that. You're monitoring hot water usage. And we've found through our own data and national data, a typical apartment dweller, about half of their water, 55% of it is hot water if they've got a laundry inside their units and whatnot. So you're still getting all the power of submetering, but you're making you're basing the bill based on their hot water usage. Long story short, there's very few buildings out there that we can't put a metering system in. We'd love to talk to you about your specifics, but most of the time we can get you a metering system.
And do you guys have some method of, like, I don't know, pulling the old permits and taking a look at that so you can answer that question from afar and without much burden to the owner up front?
We're going to want to talk to the owner and get as much information as they have about the metering, about the plumbing system. And not everybody is an expert on that. So we're really good at kind of asking some very straightforward questions to get to a place where we have a high degree of confidence on what you need.
Okay, great. So what about the monthly billing expense? We've got it all set up. We
Right.
installed it. I'm 35 bucks a month for the cellular. What else is my monthly dues?
Right. So we've got it all set up now, and it's time to start billing residents. We're going to um, I'll describe that process really quick, and then we'll talk about the costs. We're going to get a utility bill from you as the owner or manager so that we can get those rates down to literally the tenth of a penny. And I think it's important to really emphasize here, Dan, that our industry, one of the important tenets of our business is this is not an opportunity to make a profit or mark up utilities. That's a big no-no. And I love your laugh about that. Unfortunately, there's some bad actors out there that have gotten our industry some black eyes, but this is all about recovering the cost. So we are obsessive about making sure that we're pulling the actual rates from the utility. We get that either from the bill or posted rates. And we put that into our billing software. We read those meters online every month and calculate the actual rates. And then we have our utility software, our billing software creates a bill. And we're going to send that to the resident via mail or email. And then they're going to be directed to pay that. And that payment can be remitted directly to you, the owner, or you can set it up where that they send us the payment and we will reimburse you once a month with what we've collected. So lots of options throughout that. And here's the fun part. You asked how much it costs. Well, what we do is we put one last line item on that utility bill for our billing fee. Your 10 units probably going to be a $5 fee on there. And so
For each unit?
fee per unit per month. And so it's a small fee. If we're very careful to make sure that fee is kosher with any local laws or code, and that's what pays us. So you very likely could have a situation where we're going to do all of that billing service for you, send those bills, even collect the money, and it's really going to be free or at minimum greatly subsidized based on the fees from the residents. The residents end up paying for it. We do have a monthly minimum. So essentially, if you have a 20 unit or more sized apartment, it's completely free. Your 10 unit, you're going to end up collecting about half of our costs from the residents, and you're going to pay another $50, $60 out of pocket
Each month, you mean?
each month.
Okay, so it's probably $10 a unit, or what?
Yeah. So the actual cost for a 10 unit is $120, our minimum fee. You're going to
Okay.
collect 60 of that back from the residents, 50 of it back. So it's going to be 70 out of your pocket.
Okay. So we're looking at 1,200, $1,340 a month, something like that.
Yes, no,
A year.
70,
A year.
yeah, per year. Correct.
Okay. And how about collections? The tenant doesn't pay. Can you flip a switch and turn the meter off or what?
Yeah, we get asked that all the time. No, you don't want to turn the water off. That you get put on the front page of the newspaper if you do that. But you have a whole lot of tools to make sure that that is getting paid. We like to work with you up front when you're setting everything up to make sure your leases are designed so that you're telling your residents about this, keeping everything legal. And we see a lot of our clients actually put a lease note that says any monies collected each month are first going to be applied to any outstanding utility bill, and then they'll be applied to rent. So if they pay their rent and don't pay their utility, they've essentially not paid a portion of their rent. And now you have all of the tools in your lease to go after them for non-payment. What we find is, sometimes on a transition for an existing older building that has been getting free water and sewer, and now they have to start paying for it, can have a month or two of a little bit of questions and whatnot. But we have found that people just get used to this. They realize that when they find out that they're in charge and it's based on what they use, they will start making payments, and we're going to work with you to make sure that that's really not an issue.
Okay. Do you have any numbers from your own data? Do you know how many accounts are you currently billing for right now?
We do. Our particular office is billing nationwide about 27,000 accounts every month.
And out of the 27,000 per month, what is the default rate where they're not paying at any given moment?
I'd have to look it up. It's not any different probably than your rent defaults. It's a single digit number each month. Of course, different properties are different. We have some clients that never see past due accounts, and we have others that have a higher rate on that. But I'm being a little vague on the answer, but it's really not become an issue or a problem.
What do you think the reason is for that disparity?
I think a lot of it is uh, uh, methods of payment and making as easy as possible for residents to be able to pay in the manner they want. Let me give you some examples about that. Um, we've seen some of our apartment clients with newer properties that want to do everything electronically with ACH payments, and they typically have a higher success rate of collecting. We can have, say, a mobile home park clients. I don't want to despair that industry. We do a lot of mobile home parks, but they can have an older clientele of residents who want to pay with a credit card, or they struggle to even mail a check. And those are the ones I think that end up with some higher delinquencies on payments.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering just, not to like speak unfairly, but yeah, I guess like the lower income people with just less tools at their disposal in the first place. I mean, is it a money thing?
Yeah.
Is it they've been so conditioned kind of thing where this new utility bill is so foreign they simply just never pay the thing? They're like so conditioned for 40 years not paying it, and now you want them to pay it,
Right.
where that doesn't happen. So you guys have the ability to set up and accept checks, money orders, credit
Yes,
card.
all of the above. And we are
Okay.
constantly working with property managers to incentivize moving them towards automated ACH payments or setting things up online. We would love to encourage all of our clients to get their bills via email. Save the cost of the stamp, let alone the time that it takes to get that paper bill to them. And we see a lot of we see trends. We do track that on a monthly basis. How many of our accounts are switching towards email, and that has picked up the last 2 or 3 years. It's still the minority, but we're seeing some good trends with that. But if you've got a wide variety of residents, older, younger, higher in, lower income, we've got a method that they can pay. Send us the check in the mail if that works for you. We can work with that.
So in doing the math, 1440 a year minimum billing, like I don't know that that actually works if I get down to my 3 flat unit. At 10,
Yeah.
it's probably making sense. At 14 units, it's making a little more sense. Obviously at 20 or more,
Mhm.
it starts to make sense, but I guess that's a lead in to say, those water bills where that might not work might be a Philadelphia triplex. The water's not expensive. Are there areas of the country that are more expensive than others? And maybe as a second part of that question,
Mhm.
are there areas of the country your company has done a larger number of installs for that or another reason?
We do see trends in different parts of the country. I think you're really perceptive, Dan, about that. The just the calculation on a smaller property that's less than 10 units. And I would agree. 10's a real right at about the threshold there. I think anything bigger than 10, you should be looking for somebody like our business to do that monthly utility billing. But if you've got a fourplex or a triplex, that still doesn't mean you shouldn't be submetering. So again, we talked about our business being part one, getting the metering system in place. Part two is we can do the billing services. We have a lot of small properties that are 3, 4, 5 units that get the meters in place. We're happy to set them up. They have free access to that meter read, those daily reads. So if you're got that triplex, you can still take all the advantage of the power of metering your residence. And if you want to sit at your computer once a month and pull out a quick spreadsheet and do the calculation yourself and send your residents a bill, we're great to set you up with that.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a lot of listeners who are like self-managing their property,
Yep.
and that sounds perfect to them. And me, I am very busy with our high volume of like fix and flip
Yep.
deals we're doing, right? Hundreds of deals a year. And my rental portfolio is more like an IRA to me. I feel like I'm just making contributions to this thing. And then when I retire, the rents will have gone up. I'll pay the debt down and I'll be in a nice place with that little nest egg of rental property. So I'm kind of like not necessarily the best rental manager person in the world hosting the podcast here, if I'm being honest. But the self-managing people, I mean, I know some of my friends, some of the guests on the podcast show, it's in those tiny little details, Kelly, that they
Mhm.
have been extremely successful. And these are is a guy I'm thinking of, Mitch, and he was in his 60s, I guess, when he came on the show. God, it must have been 10 years, 8 years ago or something when he came on the show. Um, but Mitch was very particular on his move-ins and move-outs. I mean, there's not a detail that's getting by him at all, Mitch.
Mhm.
So he would be he's the guy self-managing, and it's like you got to give him 90 days notice if you're moving out. He's showing that property from day 90 when you've given notice until he gets at least, and he's having to move in, move out on like literally the same afternoon. It's like you're out on the 31st, Mitch is moving them in on the 1st.
Yep.
And if
Yep.
you add that up over, I don't know, 50, 60, 70, however many properties he has over 30, 40 years worth of him running his business, like how much money am I leaving on the table that a detailed, high execution type of landlord like that is going to get off the table? And I'm okay. I know I'm
Yeah.
doing my business elsewhere, right? But I
Yep.
guess the question as a wrap up to that point is who are the ideal clients for you? We talked about the building size of like 10 units, but you'd
Right.
also mentioned property managers. Does it make sense for a property manager who has a lot of these kind of clients to come along? Like who
Mhm.
else would be sort of the ideal avatar to reach out
Yeah.
to you, Kelly?
Yeah, super good question. Let me just stick with Mitch there for a minute. We love the Mitches out there, and we have a lot of them that are faithful clients. They buy the hardware. They're watching every dime. They're happy to self-manage, and we get them set up. And I will tell you, it's almost kind of fun for me that I will talk to the Mitches of the world. And they'll say, "Oh no, we can do the billing ourselves. Not a problem. Get me the metering system. We'll take care of that." And I say, "Great, give us a call if you want to change your mind on that." And I will tell you that it's not every time, but maybe 1 out of 5 or 6 times, 3 or 4 months later, we get a call from that Mitch that says, that extra $100 may not be such a bad deal to have you calculate the bills, send them out, deal with all of this. So hey, if you can do it on your own, more power to you. We want to work with you and help you out. And if you find that that's since we do it all day, every day, we're really good at it. If you find that paying a little extra money to have us do it, we could step in and do that. And if you've got a property that's larger than 20 units, it's a no-brainer because it's a free service because the residents are going to pay for it.
Yeah, it
As
makes
far
sense.
as property managers go, you bet. We love to talk to anybody with a portfolio of properties. And maybe they're not unfamiliar with submetering. Maybe they're using one of the big national billing companies or somebody local who reads meters manually or something like that. And maybe they've had a tough experience with that meters that weren't working or not reliable service. But we really encourage you to have them contact us because it works because we put the energy into it to make sure the equipment's always working well and we're on top of things. And we really take a lot of pride in our customer service with our clients.
Is there any kind of warranty on the hardware? I mean, this stuff sounds,
Yeah.
it leaks. What kind of problems do we have? That kind of thing.
Yeah, water meters. You talked about wireless, Kelly. What's all that about? Well, absolutely, there's warranties. That it is a mature industry. The manufacturers of the equipment have warranties that span years. We do a full 1 year bumper to bumper, no questions asked warranty on anything we sell, any service we offer. So you're going to get covered that way. If we're doing the billing services, Dan, part of our monthly touch with you is we're actually assessing the health of the equipment and the hardware. If a battery is getting low, our software tells us that, and we're going to say, you need to go check out unit 12. The battery needs to be changed. A brief mention about that. These transmitters are battery powered with a 7-year lithium battery. So it's not like it's something you have to do very often, but the system tells us when you need to do that, and we'll get you that $3 battery or tell you what you need to go make that change every 7 years.
Okay. What are the oldest meters you guys have running? I mean, are these the kind of things you're gonna have to change out every 10 years like the electric company seems to do, or
Yeah.
what?
Yeah. Well, we very regularly are servicing equipment we've sold 15 years ago, and it's still working. And I would be not honest to tell you everything's going to work for 15 years. Over occasionally, whether it's hard, the resident leaned their snow skis up against the meter and pull the wire out of the transmitter. Things like that are just real life that happen. But the equipment's very robust. The electronics are very much proven. And we have a full service department that will answer your phones. We'll work with you remotely to all for free on our service. And then we can send a technician out if needed, and which is quite frankly very rare that we need to actually go on site to work.
Okay. So I'm gonna switch gears a little bit. I also do commercial real estate. We build a passive partner in quite a bit of industrial construction as we speak right now, new construction ground up.
Mhm.
Some of my friends and partners are building like really large properties. They're taking them all 400, 300,000 square feet, cutting it up. 100,000 is going to be retail, 100,000 is going to be industrial, and
Mhm.
100,000 is like self storage or something like that. And in the industrial, that 100,000, maybe let's say it's whacked up into like 5 to 30,000 square foot bays for different sizes of companies as they come forward. And that's how they're stabilizing these old mall properties around the
Hmm.
country. He mentioned that he's using submetering for the electric there. And
Hmm.
one of the things I know is that these installs normally are probably 15, 20, $25,000. I don't know for his cost, but if you get in the power company to come out and put the meter in,
Yes.
it's really expensive to get a new service. Do you guys have solutions when we're bringing in a really high voltage line and now this thing's getting switched out to serve 8 or 10 bays and then meter them that way? Or is it just better to kind of go with the power company?
Oh, don't go with the power company. A lot of places in the country, the power company requires you to do that. But if you have that option, and we love to hear from customers that have that situation, go get the quote from the utility and then give us a call. We've got electric meters that can handle even that high voltage 480 three-phase voltage, up to thousands of amps on service size. Our meters are traditionally current transformer or CT rated meters, so they're easy to install by an electrician. And if it's a standard, say a 12208 three-phase, the meter price is as low for a 200 amp meter as say $300. A high end 480 volt 1200 amp is only going to be about $700. So we're talking an order of magnitude on the equipment costs from what the utility may charge. And just to emphasize, they don't require panels and a lot of expensive installation. They're easy to install at the panel. So call us. They all can work with the same reading system. So that same data is going to be pushed up to the internet. And the property manager, maintenance have access to those reads whenever they want them.
Interesting. Do you have any like examples of something big that you guys cut up in the last couple of years of that nature?
Oh, absolutely. We just got done doing a large 300 unit apartment that actually needed electric meters here locally in the greater Seattle area. We've done a couple large malls throughout California. We were at one in Texas just a few months ago. Malls are a great application for that. And we talk about both electricity as well as water. And we don't want to miss out on gas. I literally walked past our shipping department this morning and I saw a inch and a half sized large industrial grade gas meter going out the door today.
Wow.
So yeah.
How much does that thing run?
Ha, we love selling those. That one's
I
about
bet.
$1,800 for that meter.
Well, it wasn't as high as I thought you were going to say, but I haven't shopped for such a product.
Right.
The gas submeter, can you give me some use cases on something like that? Because for me, my 14 unit already has separate gas meters
Right.
because the furnaces are in there. So like doing that on, like in Chicago, there's a ton of single boiler systems. There's not a whole hell of a lot that we can do with the singles other than install 38 different furnaces and run gas lines everywhere.
Right.
What are
Right.
some use cases for the gas submetering that you have seen done where this?
One real common example is maybe an apartment building's got gas fireplaces, and that's the only gas appliance in the unit. And of course, the smart tenants are heating their unit with the gas if it's just being covered by the property. So we have systems that can allow you to meter the usage on those gas fireplaces. We can do that with either a traditional gas meter, or a lot of times we can use a electronic device that is measuring just when the switch is on And then we can do some mathematical calculations to convert that to how many cubic feet of gas each unit is using and build them accordingly. So very common to do that. So yeah, if you've got an application like that, those are the ones we love to talk to you about. Every property that we hear about has got some unique features to it, and we really pride ourselves on being very technical and figuring out what the right solution is for your application.
Okay, interesting. Well, I think I got all of my questions answered. What else did I just have did not have the perception to ask that you think is
Well,
important?
I definitely want to circle back around to that leaking toilet. And I think we
Okay.
talked about that, touched on it earlier with your example. And I think that this is one of the most exciting new things in our industry in the last few years. But with the technology as it is now, and you've got a meter that's monitoring a resident's usage, if you've got that proverbial toilet flapper hanging up and the water's running through the toilet, instead of, like you said, waiting 2, 3 months before you get any feedback on that, our systems now are designed that if they recognize water constantly running after 24 hours, we're going to send an automated email or text message to the property owner or to the maintenance person there that says, you need to go check out unit 212. There's water running there that looks like a leak. It's very reliable. We have now clients that are purchasing systems and justifying it just on that leak management only. Um, so that's a big trend. If you've got, that's more of a passive leak when we talk about it running through a toilet leak. If you've got, we're seeing a lot, some of our particularly low income or kind of emergency housing clients that aren't so much interested in recovering the utility costs, but they're very interested in knowing usage. And particularly if there is a bathtub overflowing, we can also provide leak detection that's an active base that you can get an alert within a minute, within 60 seconds, if water's flooding your bathroom. So
And when that flood, is that from the meter and the usage, or is that like a sensor that's installed in the
that
bathroom?
would be an extra sensor, but
Okay.
it relies on the same reading system that the meter's on. So you're not adding a lot of extra cost. The infrastructure is already there. We're just going to add a sensor to the system.
Yeah, and in well, it happened in Atlanta too last year. It may have happened a little bit this year. It was bad last year in Atlanta, but in Chicago and Philadelphia, especially in Chicago, we get a lot of frozen pipes.
Yep.
It makes for quite an interesting picture when you have an abandoned house or a vacant house and the pipes break and then it
Mhm.
starts flooding and then the ice sort of builds up and it's just like it's this like beautiful ice sculpture that you've never seen. The toilets are like full flooded of ice. It's like it's amazing to look at when you see it, but the damage is not amazing. It's
No.
catastrophe. It's like you got to renovate that entire house, and unfortunately, that's happened to people.
Mhm.
Renovated house. It's just getting complete.
Mhm.
Happened actually to one of my partners, and the home inspector turned off the light, thinking it was for the basement, and here it was for the furnace. And all of a sudden, this brand new rehabbed house needed all new hardwood floors. The meter, I mean, it still would have been 24 hours, I guess, worth of
Wow.
damage, but
Yeah. Yep. Unfortunately, I've heard others with those similar stories, Dan. Your multifamily investors, property owners, if they haven't already, they need to be talking to their insurance agents because quite often you can show them a active leak detection system. They will lower the cost of your premium. And we're now starting to see in some markets, especially with low income housing, that's becoming a driver. It pays for itself in months rather than years with the premium reduction.
and is that based on the water meter installation?
That one would be the water meter installation with the addition for the sensors that would go in for the active leak.
Okay, so where would those sensors be installed? If we had the 10 unit building we're using as the example, is that two sensors per unit, one in the kitchen, one in the bathroom? I mean, what kind of
Yeah.
additional cost now?
Yeah, we're talking about less than $100 per sensor. We have clients that are just putting them in the bathrooms only, one bedroom bathrooms, but a kitchen makes sense too. So you're adding $100 to $200 of extra hardware costs. They're easy to install, don't need a plumber, and it plugs into the rest of the infrastructure. So that's a good question. And this is if you had asked me about this 3 years ago, I wouldn't be giving you answers. So this is a really exciting new part of it, and it's being driven by the need. There really is a insurance premium based demand for this. So we've got some solutions that we're really having some fun selling.
Any examples you can share where this worked out for somebody, including numbers, maybe the premium reduction?
Don't have the specifics on the premium. I had one client who is a low income housing that we just installed less than a year ago, and he clearly justified the cost that we had. And again, it was not a lot. It was measured in I think it was a 60 unit property, and his all in price on that was less than about $12,000 to get the rest of that equipment in. And I believe he was sharing with me that he was looking at $20,000 to $30,000 annual premium reduction.
Oh,
Right.
wow.
Yeah. And it was a no brainer. Don't quote me on that, but that's what I tend to remember from that conversation.
And he already had the water meters
He
set up in that?
did. Yep.
Okay.
We actually sold the water meters at the same time that we provided that part of the hardware. So it was
Okay,
all,
gotcha.
yeah. So it was an additional 12 to add the active leak detection.
Yeah, I mean, if you just think through, I have never even been in all 14 or all 10 of those units that I own.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm not the poster child for managing like Mitch, who's like better than I am. um, but even the guy or gal who's managing 60 units, like, are you able to get through there even one time throughout the entire year?
Exactly.
It's, I can see why the insurance company would view that as a lower risk profile if you have that in there, because it's instantaneous
Mhm.
awareness of major water damage issue that could be coming up.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
We're also, Dan, beginning to hear from Airbnb building owners, even hotels now, especially for the leak detection. So that's kind of a fun new um, advance coming on in our industry.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Um, Before I get to my wrap up questions, any other final points here? I know we just touched on a few.
Well, you probably could just tell that I love our business. We like to say that when we can just tell our story, that it sells itself, because it really is such a great solution to a really important part of anyone who owns a multifamily. So I could go on and on, but no, it's been great. You've been a great job of touching on the important specifics, Dan.
Yeah, and one thing actually that pops to mind before we switch gears, you had mentioned that some of these states on new construction are requiring the submetering,
Mhm.
and I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask you why.
It's all about conservation. They understand what I mentioned to you on that 20 to 30% drop. So this has literally everything to do with, as a society, figuring out how we're going to take good care of our precious resources when it comes to electricity or water. That's just really important.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was guessing, right?
Yep.
We're doing this for the planet.
Right.
And we're spoiled in Chicago. I live on Lake Michigan. It's out the window, and there's a tons and tons and tons of fresh water. You could pretty much drink almost right out of it, although I wouldn't. That's where our water comes from. It comes from Lake Michigan. In the Philadelphia region, we have, I guess it comes down. The Schuylkill River is probably the supply. We've never had any issues with water. It's never been this costly
Mhm.
resource. No one's ever worried about it.
Mhm.
Atlanta, Georgia, I don't know. They have Lake Lanier, big lake, big reservoir. No one's ever really complained about the cost of water.
Right.
But as we're getting into the development space, there's areas, I don't know about Texas if that's bad, but I know for a fact that Colorado is
Mhm.
very difficult to get a water service. So it's like
Mhm.
sewers normally the limiting issue when we're developing you're going to put 60, 70 houses, there has to be sewer capacity. But in Colorado, more often it's, can I get 60 meter permits for the water here? And that's because there's just actually not enough fresh water to go around. And I'm sure that's how it is getting to be in like Las Vegas and, Phoenix,
Mhm.
I think is another one where the water issues are.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you have any insight on those water scarce markets, and have you guys done more business in those kind of areas, Kelly?
I would probably just simply say yes. The Southwest, California, Arizona clearly are hot spots for our industry. You can imagine California leads the nation in this market, just like they do in so many others, where they have are driving more legislation faster with the making sure they're approved meters. They have to be installed by an approved technician. They have to be tested every 10 years. Those kinds of things are unique to California. But it's not only California. I mean, here we are. I'm talking to you from Seattle. I can look out my window and see the damp parking lot from our rain, and we're known for our rain. We have water all around us, but water is something that we all have to be careful with. And I think it's also worth mentioning, Dan, that when we pay our water, it's almost always going to that amount is going to be what calculates our sewer cost. And sewer is all about the infrastructure those sewer utilities have to build to transport and to clean that water. For instance, in our area, it's a half a penny for the water, but it's 1.5 pennies for the sewer. And that's common throughout the United States. So it's 2.5, 3 times the cost for the sewer. And it's all based on what that water meter is telling you you're bringing in. So again, yes, I'm glad you touched on it. This is good business sense, but it's also good for our planet too.
Yeah, 100%. It seems like it's the right thing to do. So as we close, I wanted to ask, I know you're not a real estate investor kind of guy like a lot of
Right.
our guests, but the topic was very relevant and pertinent for today. But book recommendations or maybe podcast, Kelly, something maybe you have found profound or inspirational throughout your years.
Oh, I love podcasts, and a couple of my favorites. I'm a big fan of Freakonomics Radio. I'm a Patrick Lencioni fan, and his At the Table weekly podcast is also one of my favorites. Those are a couple right there. Big history buff. Always like to listen in on History Link and something like that. But no, I am the kind of person who's listening to a podcast when I'm in the car. So those are some great tips. And then I would also like to just close down with we're happy to be on your podcast. And if your listeners want to hear more about us, they can contact us at our website, submetersolutions.com. And we've set up a page on there, a link that is at submetersolutions.com/podcast with a form they can fill out, easy to fill out form. And you give us a little information about your property, our salespeople will get in contact with you, and that will lead to a free proposal for the right to the penny hardware, give you all those billing services details, and we'd really like to partner with you on making this available to your listeners.
All right, cool. So the crown jewel of wisdom, Kelly, if you could go back to your 18, I don't know, 18, 21, somewhere, you could go back to your younger self and share the crown jewel of wisdom, knowing everything you know now, what would that be?
um, I would say to my 18-year-old Kelly, I would say that it's all about relationships with people. And, working hard is important, and experiencing the world is all important. But, give that extra hug to your wife at night, and kiss your kids at night. And that's what's really going to be what we think about. I'm only a few years away from retirement, and I believe that I've done pretty good with that, but I never could. I think I could have even done better. So there's what I'm telling my 18-year-old.
Beautiful. My final question, what is the kindest thing anyone has ever done for you?
Oh, you didn't prep me for that one, Dan. Kindest thing anyone's ever done. I would say that I've had a couple mentors in my career that's really put their arm around me and given me just some great advice uh, that really has focused on relationships, being myself, and that has really proven to be very, very valuable for me in all areas of my life.
Nice. Love it. One more time, want to give us the website and then we'll close?
You betcha. Submeter Solutions with an S at the end.com/podcast. And we'd love to hear from you.
All right, Kelly. I had a great time, ton of great info here. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Great to meet you, Dan. You had great questions, and we're happy to be here.